And I was actually getting really excited, really hyped for this challenge of like, okay, let's fucking do or die, finish the book and go to Bali. This video is an update from my previous videos to add another piece to the journey that I've been on. More for my own sake, to just sort of self-accept what I've gone through and to track my own journey as a sort of a journal for whoever is watching. I was living in Auckland, New Zealand. I was running out of money. I had to ask my dad for rent money at one point, and then once that ran out, I went on government support for money. Like during that time, I just felt like I had to follow my intuition and go to rock bottom. Like rather than panicking and trying to get a job just to avoid going broke, I felt like I had to just trust what felt right at that time. And if it meant not working or like not getting a random ass job just to pay money because I'm afraid of going broke, then I'm not going to do that. So I followed my intuition and I went down this path. When I was on the government support, they applied me for jobs that I had to go for an interview. We give you free money to survive, but at the same time, you still have to put in your end of the deal and get a job that we will help you get a job. It's like a super nice system, actually. It's like one of the most beautiful parts of New Zealand government. For the people that are on the government benefit, they're in this like special employee pool in which the jobs in that pool can only be applied by the people on the government benefit. Now, like the type of employers that I feel like submit for jobs into this pool is like already a special type of employers, and the jobs are like sort of maybe easier jobs that maybe you wouldn't find on a normal job listing board. So the job that I ended up getting, I felt like was so random and so like only I could have done this job. It literally felt like this job was literally just made for me by the universe, because I don't think anybody else in the entire pool could have done it. It was essentially like a social media marketing job that required like very specific skills that I felt like if anyone else had my skill set, they wouldn't be broke and in this government program applying for this job. Yet here I am. Like the moment I saw that job and we read it together, I'm like, okay, I see the next puzzle of my story, the next chapter of my story. This is the thing I actually need to do, and the little breadcrumbs that led to this point, this is the next breadcrumb. Within about 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, this job is not for me. I know I can play this role and I can fit in and I can make money, but this is not where my full potential is going to be developed. Like this is not me. This is like me enough to like a small fragment of who I am that I can just pretend to play this role and fit in, but I cannot stay here forever. This is still another just breadcrumb in the journey that I'm going through. And as such, I'm not gonna dedicate my whole life to this thing that's like such a small part of me. So after like 2 weeks, I had this like realization, and I'm like, okay, I need to get out of here. After a month basically of working at the job, I left the job. It was a full-time job, so the money was pretty good. So at that point, I had some money, and I also had my lease in my apartment expiring around the same time. So my job was expiring, my apartment was expiring, and I felt like New Zealand for me as a whole was expiring. At that point, I'm like, well, what I really want to do is to write the book. And it doesn't actually really matter where I am. I don't have to be in New Zealand for that. And Bali is a really nice place. It's, more affordable, like a lot more affordable than New Zealand. It's healthy. The people there are more interesting. It's more diverse. Let's go to Bali. The book I was writing is called God Game. And it's a spiritual/philosophical book that culminates all the wisdom and knowledge I've learned about life and how the universe works. And when I was writing it, it felt like one of the most on-point, real, important things that I needed to do and give into this world. As I was sort of like thinking about the marketing side of it, I stumbled upon an old ebook that I wrote during COVID. It was a little ebook that I was thinking of turning into a video course about how to be natural on camera. Because I thought, okay, well, during COVID, people are gonna be on social media more, and maybe some of them would want to make content, but they're afraid of being on camera. And since I've been doing it for such a long time now, I can like share my knowledge and my tips on what I did to help myself feel more comfortable and more natural on camera. So the book was called like How to Be Natural on Camera and Life by Using the Camera, or like by fully accepting who you are. But then I renamed it to Camera Therapy because I felt like, okay, sure, there's the aspect of you being more natural on camera, but actually through trying to find your authenticity through the lens of the camera and being yourself, like the naturalness of the camera is almost like a superficial byproduct. But what's more important, when what's a lot more real, is that you find your own sense of your truth and you express that into the world. And that for me is so much more valuable and like impactful than just like feeling comfortable to make TikToks with. I sort of like took a slight detour from the main book and I wanted to like finish up this book and release it. So during like the first few weeks of Bali, I was finishing that little book off. I also recorded an audiobook slash video book, which is just a video of me doing the audiobook. And it's like an ebook, an audiobook, and a video book all in one. And you can also get it if you want. I'll put a link in the description for all my books. And this one actually is for free or donation based. So that's out there. And that was like the first like project I guess I finished in my little digital nomad journey. So I got to Bali and I basically had 2 months of time to make it all work. My visa was for 2 months and I only really had enough money for 2 months. I found a listing in a Facebook group where they were looking for a social media marketing person for a school. And I'm like, oh, I love schools. I love working with children and helping children grow essentially. So anything related to like contributing to that field, I'm like, I'm very happy to do it. And because I had the experience from my previous social media marketing job, I'm like, yes, I'm like so equipped. And it turned out that the owner of the school was like a super progressive person, and the vision that she had was like so cool, and like it was like exactly the kind of way I would approach opening a school. So I was really happy to do the job for her. The pay wasn't great necessarily, but I was just glad I could contribute my skills and, you know, have enough money to at least pay for food. And I was able to successfully apply my skills to that school, and I was able to get them more students. However, it didn't really work out. After a month, I decided to leave because there were some weird codependency from the owner onto me that it kind of felt a bit icky, and certain boundaries got crossed, and I'm like, okay, I think I should not continue doing this. However, I did feel like I set them up pretty well in terms of giving them a foundation in which they can get more students from through the social media. I also realized that even if I'm doing really meaningful work for a meaningful cause, unless I'm working for myself, I feel like any type of effort or work that I put in is not going to be as beneficial for Earth comparatively. And I think finishing the experiences of being employed was what I needed to really shift into and evolve into who I really need to become. And while Bali, and especially Ubud, is a very high vibrational place, and it's a very loving, happy energy. Like sometimes it's so high that it feels like you're caught in this delirium and you're ungrounded. And like being there for like 2 months, it felt like I was really getting out of my skin. It's like my body was here, but my consciousness was like trying to like latch on my body, and I'm like, fuck, I need to pull that shit back into my body.
Get me straight.
One thing led to another, and I somehow had more money than I had anticipated, whether it was money coming in that I didn't realize was coming, or I had a tax return that turned out to be a lot of money. I had more money to continue my journey. So after 2 months of gallivanting in Bali and, you know, making some progress on my book, I decided the next destination on the list of the journey was... It's sort of like Canggu and Bali, but just way more balanced and chill. Like Bali in general has like really high, intense, fun energy, but it's like kind of like out of whack and unbalanced. Some things would be really good and some things would be really bad, whereas Da Nang felt more normal. Like it wasn't as exciting as Bali, but it still sort of had everything Bali had, just to a milder degree. And I kind of felt like that's actually exactly what I needed for myself. I was much more able to get into a writing routine a lot faster than when I was in Bali. The version of me improved since Bali. In the last week before I left Ubud, I went to this meditation event, a Vipassana meditation event, where I met these two girls that did the Vipassana meditation in Ubud. And they were telling me how they had an amazing experience and that, oh, you should totally do it. And I've been wanting to do it for some time, but I felt like I was never ready. Like I was never grounded enough to sustain 10 days of silent meditation. But at that time, I kind of felt like I was slowly getting ready to do it. So when I was in Vietnam, I actually applied to do the Vipassana retreat. That was 2 months basically after I landed in Da Nang. For these retreats, you have to apply quite a long time in advance. And you don't always get in, but I did get in and I'm like, okay, cool. Let's focus on the book and see where that takes me. If that succeeds and everything works out, then I will go back to Bali and do the retreat. And I was writing and writing and writing, and eventually I had the idea of releasing just the first part, the main philosophy part of the book, because I realized how big this monster became. It just kept evolving as I evolved. This book was not just, I guess, a book for me, but it felt like a living, breathing representation of what I am. And the more I evolved, the more it evolved. And I thought, okay, I do want to go to this retreat, but I don't think I'm going to be able to finish the entire book in time. So I will release the book one part at a time, like how artists release singles for an EP, right? So I will release the first single for the EP of my God Game book. And I was actually getting really excited, really hyped for this challenge of okay, let's fucking do or die, finish the book and go to Bali. About a week before I really had to fly to Bali and do the retreat, my agent from Australia calls me, my acting agent that I haven't worked with since COVID, basically, because I used to live in Sydney for a little while. And he was like, hey, is your bank account still the same? And I'm like, yes, it is. He's like, well, that commercial that you did that keeps renewing every year, well, they want to renew it again this year. So here's a couple of $1,000. Holy shit. If this wasn't a sign from the universe for me to do the retreat, then goddamn, I don't know what the fuck is. Let's go. I was really close to finishing the first part of the book, but because I got the money, I was like, well, now I don't need a rush. I can sort of take it slow and not panic about it. And I'm really glad I did, because what I've released now, the first part of the book, is so much more evolved than if I just released it that time in Da Nang. And it kind of felt like a message from the universe being like, hey, look, this thing you're doing, it's really real and it's really important. And we don't want you to rush it. We want you to do it properly. So here's some money for you to go to the retreat, improve yourself, evolve yourself, and hopefully that evolves the book and you release a better book when you release the book. I flew in on the day of the retreat, and my plan was to just go directly from the airport to the shuttle pickup location, which will take me to the retreat. And I thought I had enough time when I checked Google Maps, but when I got there, the driver told me that Google Maps isn't always representative of real life, and it's actually going to take longer than you anticipated. Traffic in Bali is really bad, especially if you're in a car. So my driver was like, I can drive you to close to the central of Ubud where it gets really busy, and then what you can do is you can book a Grab, which is their version of Uber, book a motorbike on Grab, and a guy on a motorbike can take you to the pickup location. And that's what I did. I arrived at the location 10 minutes late, but they waited for me and I was able to get on the shuttle and arrive at the retreat. I just knew when I first started having this vision of doing Vipassana in Ubud that I'm going to make it one way or another. And as long as I remotely tried, I couldn't have not made it. The Vipassana technique of meditating, I find, is one of the best techniques I've ever learned to manage my own state of being, and I use it to this day. But the way that it's taught and the structure the retreat has, I don't necessarily agree with all of it. But because it is a free event and you get food and everything, one cannot complain. I was hoping during the retreat, because I had no plans of what to do after the retreat, that I would get some sort of epiphany and everything would be clear and laid out. Unfortunately, that was not the case. After the retreat, on the day it finished, I went to a cafe called Sayuri, where I tried to make a plan and figure everything out. I found out that they were doing like a 3-day mantra chanting course in the cafe, and I was like, well, I've got to stay for that. And I kind of felt like this was the next step and the next breadcrumb on my journey. I was also messaging my dad that day, and he was saying how he was going to go back to China and stay there for a little while and take care of grandma. And if I wanted to come, I can come and stay with him as well and chill for a bit. And, I haven't seen him for like 2 years. I haven't seen my grandma or China for like over 10 years. So I'm like, perfect, that's the plan. The time that he was going to be at China was basically 2 months after I arrived in Bali, which again is basically the time of my visa anyway. So that was the perfect timing. And because I went to Vipassana, I was much more able to be grounded and settled in Ubud. And this time around, I could see all the distractions that I had from my previous time in Ubud no longer feeling like it aligned with me anymore. I literally felt like I leveled up so much that my standards of what I need in my life grew, or I was more aware of it. And that my internal life and being alone by myself, working on my book, working on me, felt so good that the external reality and the people that I met externally had to match that level, otherwise they just were not worthy. So a lot of events and a lot of people that I previously might have hung out with in Ubud, I no longer did. I was much more focused on my internal journey. However, because of Vipassana, it gave me a lot more ideas on how to write the book, and I decided to restructure it, and essentially it took a lot longer to finish than I was anticipating. So I wasn't able to finish the book in Ubud, but I thought since I'm going to China anyway, I can just chill with my dad and finish the book in China. Little did I realize how much I've grown and outgrown China, that me being there was so in conflict with who I was becoming that I felt like I couldn't stay there. Being with my dad just felt like I was going back to a comfortable past version of myself, that if I remained in that state, would be going backwards. Similarly, seeing my family again after 10 years, I was like, whoa, I feel so disconnected from them. Like, I was just playing a character of who I was in the past, fitting into this idea of who I am. And they felt so similar to how I remembered them 10 years ago, that it's like they were stuck in a time capsule. And I'm like, whoa, if I hang out with my family as well, it felt like it was just gonna pull me back into an older version of me. I wasn't developed enough in my current version or in my potentially new version that I was stable enough to stay with them and still maintain my sense of self. So very quickly I realized that I couldn't stay there. After living in New Zealand and in a Western culture for such a long time, I felt like an innate part of my Chinese personality that is true to me was slowly being lost to a more Western type of personality. And reconnecting back with China again and seeing how Chinese people interact with each other, I'm like, whoa, oh, I get it. The reason I was like that when I was younger was because of the influence from China. And this influence was actually a really good influence. The Chinese personality has its pros and cons as well as the Western personality. And I realized the pros of China that I had in the past were actually really good. And if anything, I should revitalize that part of me. Mainly that I feel like Chinese people, there's like the meme of like how Chinese parents don't believe in mental health. And like, I can see why, because if you see the way that Chinese people are, like, I feel like they're so grounded and so pragmatic that they don't have desire to humor mental delusions that create anxiety, which is what a lot of the Western civilization have. It's like they're so in their heads that they create all of these like anxious things that give them anxiety or depression, whereas like China is like, well, you just gotta do shit, you know? There's a real strength in the way that they approach life and the way they interact with each other. Like there's a directness and an honesty that I feel like comes from a stable core within the person, a strength. That's why they're so direct and so honest and so capable of doing stuff. And I really appreciated that part of China. And it made me want to enforce that part of me more. Because I felt like a lot of it did get lost to Western civilization, where there's a lot more like people pleasing and like over caring for other people's feelings and being really careful with your words to the point where like every conversation feels like a landmine. But in China, everyone is like so direct and so straight to the point. You don't need to worry about offending the other person as if they're just like snowflake, because everyone is strong in China. Everyone is stable, that you're able to just like bypass all the emotional weakness and just do shit. I used to be so much more like that, but I felt like I wasn't allowed to when I was in a Western civilization because people were snowflakes. But now I realize that part of me was never wrong. And if anything, I should be more of that. Woo! So after 2 weeks, I bought a ticket and I returned back to Da Nang. And now I've been in Da Nang for almost 3 months. I did finish my book, which I released about 2 weeks ago. And I've been making content for it mostly on TikTok and social media. I did make some sales, which is cool, but it's, not enough right now to sustain my current burn rate of my life. My visa for Vietnam expires in about 12 days at the time of this video. And I think only have enough money for maybe 2 more weeks of my life as well to survive. So my time is running out and my money is running out. And now again, I'm faced with this potential death moment in my life where I have no idea what's beyond the unknown. I have no idea if I just keep making content, it's gonna generate enough buzz and make enough sales or get money some other way through the universe. But I just know that every day I have certain things that I intuitively feel drawn to do. And I will just keep doing these things and have the faith that things will work out. My book, God Game, essentially is about how life and all of existence is a game. And the best way to play is to follow your intuition. Your intuition can see beyond your conscious awareness into the unknown, into grand quantum realms where all your dreams and magic lies. But you have to have the courage to follow your intuition and have the faith that it will actually work out. And this is the most unknown period, actually, I've been in my life. I'm trying to put on a happy face, but I am scared. Like, I would be lying and remiss if I said I wasn't. I hope one day my journey really does become something of a success story that you can look to as a testimony for following your heart. And when that happens, I will make a video to let you know. So, until then, Godspeed.
I know now, without a doubt, Kingdom Hearts is light!